Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work at the naval base as a logistics coordinator. My shift runs from 7 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, which means I'm often running errands right after work still wearing my Navy work uniform. The uniform is standard navy blue pants and a matching blue shirt with some patches and my name tag. I guess from a distance it might look similar to those blue vests that some retail workers wear, but up close it's obviously different. The fabric is thicker, the patches are military style, and it has that crisp, structured look that work uniforms have. Yesterday was one of those typical Tuesday afternoons where I had absolutely nothing in my fridge at home. I've been putting off grocery shopping for days, surviving on leftover takeout and whatever random snacks I could find in my kitchen cabinets. My stomach was already growling during the last hour of my shift, so I decided to stop by Walmart on my way home to grab something quick for dinner. The store was moderately busy for a weekday evening. I grabbed one of those small shopping baskets and headed straight for the meat section. I picked up a package of chicken breast, nothing fancy, just something I could throw in a pan with some seasoning. Then I wandered over to get some bread and maybe a bag of frozen vegetables to round out the meal. I found myself in the frozen food aisle, standing in front of the vegetable section trying to decide between broccoli and mixed vegetables. The freezers looked pretty picked over, like they hadn't been restocked in a while. I was just minding my own business, basket in hand, when I heard the heavy footsteps approaching from behind. I turned around to see this middle-aged woman with short blonde hair walking toward me with her shopping cart. She had that look on her face. You know the one. The look that says she's already decided she's going to have a problem with someone today, and congratulations. You're the lucky winner. She stopped right in front of me and pointed an accusing finger at the half-empty freezer section. Then she started yelling at me, demanding that I stop standing around and get the boxes from the back to restock the shelves. She said she knew that employees like me always hide the good stuff in storage. I actually laughed a little because the whole situation seemed so ridiculous. Here I was, clearly holding a shopping basket with my own groceries, and this woman thought I was an employee just standing around doing nothing. I politely told her that I didn't work at the store, but she wasn't having any of it. Her face got even more twisted up with anger. She told me not to give her attitude and said she could see my uniform. She accused me of being lazy and said it was my job to help her. She actually pushed her shopping cart forward into me, hard enough that I had to take a step back to avoid getting the metal edge right in my stomach. What was happening was unbelievable. I tried to explain again that I was literally just there to buy groceries. I held up my basket so she could clearly see the chicken and bread inside, hoping that would make it obvious I was a customer just like her. She said she didn't care what story I was trying to make up. Then she threatened that if I didn't help her right away, she would find my manager and get me fired. At this point, my patience was completely gone. I'd had a long day at work, I was hungry, and this woman was being absolutely ridiculous. So I decided to call her bluff. I told her to go ahead and get my manager because I would love to meet them too, since I apparently worked there now. Her eyes got wide like she was surprised I was challenging her. She huffed and puffed for a second, then spun around and stormed off with her cart. I went back to looking at the frozen vegetables, picked up a bag of mixed vegetables, and started heading toward the checkout area. But when I was walking through the store, I could hear this loud, angry voice coming from the front. I got curious and walked a little closer to see what was going on. Sure enough, there was the same woman at the customer service desk, and she was absolutely laying into this poor teenage employee who was working there. The kid looked like he was maybe 16 or 17, probably one of his first jobs, and this woman was just tearing him apart. She was telling the employee that there was someone in the frozen section who had refused to help her and was incredibly rude. She demanded that this person needed to be fired immediately. The employee behind the counter looked confused and a little overwhelmed. He kept looking around like he was hoping a manager would appear and save him from this situation. He asked her to describe the person so he could try to find a manager to speak with them. She told him that the person was wearing the blue uniform and was in the frozen food section at that very moment. She insisted that when this person told her he didn't work there, it was obviously a lie since he was wearing their uniform. The employee looked past her and spotted me, standing there with my shopping basket, still in my Navy work uniform. I could see the exact moment it clicked for him. He pointed directly at me and asked if I was the person she was talking about. I gave a little wave. Then he told her something that made her whole world crumble. He explained that I didn't even work there, and that what I was wearing wasn't their uniform at all. She went from angry and self-righteous to completely mortified in about 2 seconds flat. She looked back and forth between me and the employee a couple of times, like her brain was trying to process what had just happened. Then, without saying another word, she just abandoned her shopping cart right there at the service desk and practically ran out of the store. The teenage employee and I made eye contact and both started laughing. He said he was sorry for what happened, and I told him it wasn't his fault at all. I felt bad that he had to deal with people like that on what was probably minimum wage. I finished my shopping, bought my chicken and vegetables, and went home to cook dinner. But the whole drive home I kept thinking about how entitled that woman was. She was so convinced that she was right, so sure that she could push people around and make demands that she never even considered she might be wrong. The funny part is that if she had just been polite from the beginning and asked nicely if I knew where she could find more frozen vegetables, I probably would have been happy to help her look or suggest she ask an actual employee. But instead she chose to be aggressive and demanding, and it completely backfired on her. I've been married to my husband for almost a year now, and we've been together for a little over 2 years. When we first got together, I thought it was pretty cool that he had such a good relationship with his ex-wife. They divorced amicably years ago when their kids were still young, and now those kids are all grown up. The three of us actually became friends, which I know sounds weird to some people, but it worked for us. One thing that never really bothered me before was that she was still on my husband's Costco membership. I mean, I was still on my ex's membership too, so it seemed fair. We all just went about our business, shopping when we needed to, no big deal. But then something happened that really opened my eyes to how one-sided these arrangements can be. I was doing my usual grocery run, had my cart loaded up with about $200 worth of stuff. I got to the checkout, handed over my membership card, and the cashier told me I'd been removed from the account. Just like that. No warning, no heads up, nothing. The cashier explained that the card wasn't active anymore, and that I'd been taken off the membership. When I protested that I'd just used it the week before, she said there was nothing she could do and that I needed to contact the primary member. I had to abandon my entire cart and walk out empty-handed. It was embarrassing and frustrating. When I called my ex later, he just shrugged it off and said his new girlfriend wanted to be added, so he had to make room. No apology, no consideration for the fact that I was standing there looking like an idiot. That's when I realized I needed to get on my husband's account. It was getting ridiculous that I couldn't shop at Costco on my own. Every time I wanted to go, I had to drag my husband along or wait for him to be free. So yesterday we finally had some time together, and I brought it up. I asked if we could go to Costco and get me added to his account because I was tired of not being able to shop there by myself. My husband immediately agreed and said he should have thought of it sooner, especially after what had happened to me with my ex. We drove to Costco, and that's when we learned that, to add me, someone else had to be removed. The account only allows 2 people. My husband tried calling his ex-wife to give her a heads up, asking her to call him back because he needed to talk about the Costco membership. She didn't answer, so he called her boyfriend. We're friends with him too, and he's always been really reasonable about everything. My husband explained that he needed to add me to the Costco account, but they said he had to remove someone first. He asked if it would be okay to remove his girlfriend, since they could always get their own membership if they needed one. The boyfriend was completely fine with it and said they hardly ever shop there anyway. He told us to go for it, so we went ahead and added me to the account. I was so relieved to finally have my own access. We did our shopping and headed home, both of us thinking everything was settled. But then his ex-wife called back, and boy was she mad. She angrily asked what he had done, saying she'd just tried to buy groceries at Costco and her card didn't work. My husband explained that he'd tried to call her first and that he'd added me to the account, which required removing someone. She yelled that he should have waited for her to call back and that she shopped at Costco all the time. She said the whole thing was completely messed up. I pointed out that her boyfriend had said they hardly ever went there, which seemed to contradict what she was saying. She snapped back that it wasn't the point and that you can't just kick someone off without proper notice. My husband apologized and said he really had tried to reach her first. He also mentioned that it wasn't like what had happened to me, where I got stuck at checkout with a full cart because my ex removed me without any warning. She insisted that was different, and that he should have given her a month's notice at least. Then she brought up how she'd been contributing to his rebate check all these years with her purchases. The rebate check last year was barely $100, and we'd spent thousands on new flooring alone plus all our regular shopping. I told her the rebate was only $100 and that we'd spent way more than she did. She kept insisting that wasn't the point and that she'd been shopping there for over a decade. She said it was her store too. She'd been getting a free Costco membership for more than 10 years, paying nothing for the privilege, and now she was acting like we'd stolen something from her. My husband offered to pay for a year's membership for her so she could keep shopping there. She agreed but said she was still mad about how he'd handled the whole situation. She insisted he should have been more considerate. After she hung up, my husband looked exhausted. He asked if I thought they were wrong about the whole thing. I told him he had to be kidding, and that she'd been freeloading off his membership for over a decade. I reminded him that her boyfriend had said it was fine, but I could see my husband felt guilty, so I didn't push it. He ended up paying for her membership like he promised. A week later, when I was at Costco doing my weekly shopping, I ran into her boyfriend in the electronics section. He asked how the new membership was working out, and I thanked him for being so cool about everything. He said it was no problem, but mentioned that he was surprised she'd gotten so upset. He explained that she literally hadn't been to Costco in like 6 months, and that he was the one who did all the shopping. He even had his own membership through work. I stared at him and asked him to repeat what he'd said about her not shopping there. He confirmed that she hated Costco, saying it was too crowded and the portions were too big. He thought the last time she'd gone was for some jewelry sale around Christmas, so there it was. She'd thrown a fit over losing a membership she barely used, made my husband feel terrible, and even got him to pay for a replacement membership she probably wouldn't use either. I've been coaching high school American football for 15 years now. Started right after I graduated college with my sports management degree. Back then I was this skinny kid who barely knew what he was doing. But years of working with teenage athletes, dealing with angry parents, and spending countless hours in the gym myself had turned me into someone who could handle pretty much anything. Or so I thought. The whole mess started 3 months into the season. We had this kid on our team whose mom thought he was the next big thing heading to the National Football League. The kid wasn't terrible, but he wasn't starter material either. He had decent speed but terrible attitude problems, and couldn't follow plays to save his life. During practice, he'd argue with me about every instruction and act like he knew better than someone who'd been doing this for over a decade. His mom was even worse. She'd show up to every practice, standing on the sidelines yelling suggestions about what plays we should run and which kids should be benched. Most parents stayed in the parking lot or the bleachers during practice, but not her. She paced back and forth right behind our bench, making comments loud enough for everyone to hear. The breaking point came after our game against Central High. We were down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and I had my starters in trying to make something happen. Her son had played maybe 10 minutes total throughout the entire game, mostly on special teams. We ended up losing by 14 points. After the game, while I was talking to the other coaches about what went wrong, she walked onto the field. Most parents had already cleared out, but she walked right up to where we were standing near the 50-yard line. She started screaming at me, saying I had cost us the game and that her son should have been playing quarterback the entire time. I tried to explain that her son was still learning the position and wasn't ready for this level of competition. She called that complete garbage and said he was better than any of the other kids I had playing. The thing is, her son was actually our third-string quarterback. Our starter had thrown for over 200 yards that night, and our backup had done fine when he came in during the third quarter. Her kid had shown up late to practice twice that week and couldn't remember half the plays during our walkthrough. I told her I understood she was frustrated, but that personnel decisions were mine to make based on what I saw in practice and what was best for the team. She got even angrier and said what was best for the team was playing the most talented players, not my little favorites. She was getting louder now, and a few parents who were still hanging around started looking our way. My assistant coaches exchanged looks, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. I suggested we continue the conversation another time when everyone had a chance to cool down. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling that we were settling this right now and that I've been holding her son back all season because I was jealous of his talent. She began jabbing her finger at my chest, getting right up in my face. I'm about 6'3" and weigh around 230 pounds. Years of lifting weights and staying in shape to keep up with high school athletes had built me into someone who could handle physical confrontation if necessary. But I never expected what happened next. She called me a washed-up nobody who never made it past high school ball myself. Before I could respond, she took 3 steps back and then charged at me like she was trying to make a tackle. I saw her coming, but honestly didn't think she'd actually follow through with it. She lowered her shoulder and ran straight into me with everything she had. The impact was pathetic. I barely moved. It was like watching someone run into a brick wall. She bounced off me and went down hard, immediately grabbing her shoulder and screaming. She started yelling that I had attacked her and demanding someone call the police. I told her she had just run into me and that I didn't even move. She kept screaming that I had assaulted her and that she was pressing charges. Several parents had seen the whole thing happen. They started gathering around, and a few were already pulling out their phones to call for help. Within about 10 minutes, an ambulance and 2 police officers showed up. The paramedics checked out her shoulder while she kept yelling about how I had violently attacked her. One of the officers started taking her statement while the other came over to talk to me. The officer asked me to tell him what had happened. I explained that she had charged at me and run into me, that I didn't move or push back or anything, and that she just bounced off and hurt herself. He said that wasn't what she was saying happened. Before I could explain further, one of the parents who'd witnessed everything stepped forward. The parent told the officer they had seen the whole thing and that I was telling the truth. They said the woman had run at me like a linebacker and that I had just stood there. Another parent joined in and said they had gotten it on video and asked if the officer wanted to see it. The officer nodded and the parent pulled out their phone. Clear as day, you could see her backing up, charging forward, and bouncing off me like I was made of concrete. The video even caught her screaming about assault afterward. By this point, more witnesses were speaking up. Everyone who'd seen it was telling the same story. The officer went back to talk to his partner and the woman, who was now being loaded into the ambulance with her arm in a sling. The officer told her they had reviewed the video evidence and spoken to multiple witnesses and that she had attacked me, not the other way around. She said that was impossible and accused everyone of covering for me. The officer explained that the video clearly showed her charging at me while I remained stationary, and that if anyone should be pressing charges, it would be me against her for assault. She said it was ridiculous and demanded to speak to his supervisor. The officer told her she could do that from the hospital, but that right now she was being treated for injuries she got while committing assault against me. The paramedics wheeled her away, still protesting her innocence. The officer took down my contact information and said I might need to give a statement later, but that based on the evidence, no charges would be filed against me. Her son quit the team the next week. Word spread around school pretty quickly about what his mom had done. The kid couldn't handle the embarrassment and transferred to a different school before the season ended. About a month later, when I ran into the officer at a coffee shop, he told me the woman had tried to sue me for her medical bills and emotional distress. Her lawyer dropped the case after seeing the video and witness statements. She ended up needing surgery on her shoulder and physical therapy for months. I heard she tried to get me fired by complaining to the school board, but by then, the video had made its way around social media and everyone knew the real story. My husband and I have been married for over 20 years. We have 2 kids who are now in college. One's a sophomore, the other's a junior. We've been no contact with my husband's entire immediate family since 2016. That's 9 years of complete silence, and it wasn't a decision we made lightly. For over 20 years, we gave them chance after chance. We set boundaries, we gave them results when they crossed those boundaries, and we tried everything we could to maintain a healthy relationship. But his family was toxic in ways that would make your head spin. They were manipulative, entitled, and treated us like walking ATMs. The final straw came in 2016 when they crossed a line we couldn't forgive and we went completely no contact. Going no contact meant blocking them on everything: social media, email, phone numbers, the works. We changed our phone numbers, moved 4 hours away, and started fresh. The only person we still talk to from that side of the family is my husband's aunt, who is honestly the only decent human being in that bunch. But here's the thing about entitled people: they never really go away. Over the years, we get random mail from them because that's the one thing they couldn't be blocked from. Birthday requests, Christmas wish lists, graduation gift demands. Not just normal birthday stuff, but full-blown registries, like they're getting married or having a baby. Except it's for a random Tuesday in March because someone got a promotion at work. The gifts they'd request weren't normal either. We're talking hundreds of dollars for basic items. They'd put together these registries with the most expensive versions of everything, like they were too good for regular household items. Last week I called my husband's aunt just to catch up. She's in her 70s, lives alone on Social Security, and is one of the kindest people you'll ever meet. She told me something that made my jaw drop. She said my mother-in-law had called her asking for money. Not just any money, she wanted her to donate over $100,000 for the golden granddaughter's dorm fees. She explained that my mother-in-law told her they were family and needed to stick together and do their part. My aunt said she could barely believe what she was hearing, especially since she's on Social Security and lives modestly. I had to ask her to repeat that because I was sure I misheard the amount. $100,000 for a dorm room. My aunt told me, she said absolutely no way. And then my mother-in-law had the nerve to send her a text invitation to something called a dorm shower. My aunt said she'd never heard of such a ridiculous thing in her life. Then my aunt told me they had also sent her a graduation request asking for straight cash when the niece graduated high school. Not even a party or celebration, just a demand to send money because she graduated. While we were talking, I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Then friends from our old hometown started reaching out with disturbing news. One old friend called to tell me that my in-laws had been harassing her, trying to get my contact information. She said they called her 3 times that week asking for my phone number and address, claiming it was urgent family business. Even after she told them she didn't have my current information, they kept calling back. This happened with 5 different people over the course of 2 days. My husband's family was basically stalking our old friends and acquaintances, trying to track us down. Then the mail came. I opened our mailbox to find an actual printed invitation. Not just any invitation, this was fancy cardstock with embossed lettering. It was for something called a dorm shower for my husband's niece, who was apparently going to college. Along with the invitation were not 1, not 2, but 3 separate gift registry links. 3 different stores, all with the most ridiculous items I've ever seen. My family and I looked at these registries together, and we were all laughing because it was so absurd. The cheapest thing on there was a pack of washcloths for $60. $60 for washcloths. Then there was a power strip for $120. A power strip. The prices just went up from there. There were items in the $2,000 range. Half the stuff on these registries were commercial-grade appliances that you literally cannot use in a dorm room. Mini fridges that were too big, microwaves that would trip every circuit breaker on campus, and furniture that wouldn't fit through a dorm room door. My husband looked at the list with me and wondered out loud if they were planning to renovate the entire dorm building. Then the phone call started. Numbers we didn't recognize from the area code where his family lives. We let them all go to voicemail, and most people didn't leave messages. But then she called. My mother-in-law's voice came through the speaker, and I hadn't heard it in 9 years. She left a message saying that the niece was going away for college, and they needed my husband to contribute $100,000 for her dorm. She said they had also sent him an invitation to the dorm shower and a picture from the graduation with requests for money. She ended by telling him not to disappoint them because he owed it to his niece and sister. I had to play that message 3 times. $100,000 for a dorm room, and apparently we owed it to them. Let me give you some context here. The niece's parents both work for the state government. They love to brag about their jobs and their salaries, which are public record. Combined, they make over $500,000 a year. $500,000! And they're asking people on Social Security to pay for their daughter's dorm expenses. Meanwhile, my husband and I have 2 kids in college right now. We're paying for their education without asking anyone for a single penny. Our kids chose to stay local to save money, and we've never once made any grand announcements or sent out gift registries for their college expenses. Here's what really got me mad. This woman had the nerve to call my elderly parents and other senior citizens in our extended family asking for money. My dad called me this morning completely confused, asking what a dorm shower was and why my in-laws were calling him asking for money and gifts. That's when I found out they had been calling everyone they could think of who might be related to us, including my 75-year-old father who has never even met these people. My husband took one look at the invitation and all the registry information and fed it straight into the shredder. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. We've maintained no contact for 9 years, and we're not about to break that streak now. But apparently, they weren't done. In the last 2 hours, I've gotten 6 more calls from unknown numbers with their area code. Nobody's leaving messages, they're just calling over and over again. The thing that really gets me is that in all of this, all these demands for money, all these guilt trips about family obligations, not once did they ask about their biological grandchildren. Not once did they mention wanting to see our kids or ask how they're doing in college. It's been 9 years since they've seen or spoken to their own grandchildren, and their only contact with us is to demand money for someone else's kid. My husband's aunt called me back this afternoon with another unbelievable update. She told me that my sister-in-law had called her again, saying that since she wouldn't donate to the dorm fund, the least she could do was buy something from the registry. My sister-in-law had actually suggested she get the washcloths, since they were the cheapest thing on there, claiming it would show that she cared about the family. I told my aunt she should block their number and not give them another thought. These people are something else. They cut contact with us, ignore their grandchildren for nearly a decade, and then show up demanding 6-figure donations, like we're some kind of charity. I found out from my aunt that they're planning multiple dorm showers. Apparently, this one was just for our side of the family. They're having separate events for different groups of people to maximize their gift haul. When I first got hired 8 months ago, the manager seemed understanding about my limited availability. I could only work weekends and Tuesday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. because of my course load and study schedule. The job itself wasn't bad. I worked in the electronics department, helping customers find what they needed and handling returns. The pay was decent for retail, and most of my co-workers were pretty cool. The only problem was my manager, who I'll call Karen because she earned that title. Karen had been running this department for about 3 years, and she acted like she owned the place. She was one of those people who thought being in charge meant she could do whatever she wanted, even if it meant ignoring company policies. The trouble started in my 3rd month. I had filled out my availability form clearly stating I could only work Saturdays, Sundays, and Tuesday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. Karen had signed it herself, acknowledging my schedule restrictions, Everything was going smoothly until she started getting creative with the weekly schedules. It began with small things. She'd schedule me for a Wednesday afternoon shift and then act surprised when I reminded her I had classes. She asked if I could skip one class because they really needed me there. I explained that I couldn't skip my organic chemistry lab because it had mandatory attendance and I'd fail if I missed it. She seemed annoyed but said she'd figure something out. But she didn't figure anything out. The next week, she scheduled me for a Thursday morning shift. When I called to remind her about my availability, she got frustrated. She told me they were really short-staffed and everyone needed to be flexible. I explained again that I literally couldn't work during my class times because that's why we had availability forms. She then suggested I drop a class or something. I was shocked she was suggesting I drop a class for a part-time retail job. I explained again that my education came first, and she reluctantly moved me to a Sunday shift instead. This pattern continued for months. Every single week, Karen would schedule me for days I wasn't available. Every single week, I'd have to call and remind her. Every single week, she'd act like it was my fault for not being flexible enough. The conversations became more and more frustrating. She said she didn't understand why I couldn't just work when she needed me to work. I reminded her that I had told her from day one about my class schedule and that she had signed my availability form. She brushed it off saying that was months ago and things change, and that they needed coverage since I was one of their best workers. I told her I appreciated that, but my availability hadn't changed, because I still had the same classes. Then she basically threatened my job by saying maybe this position wasn't the right fit for me. That last comment really got to me. She was threatening my job because I wouldn't skip college classes to cover shifts I was never supposed to work in the first place. The breaking point came during finals week. I had specifically requested that entire week off months in advance because I knew I'd need to focus on studying. Karen had approved the time off request, but when the schedule came out, there I was, scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon shift right in the middle of my chemistry final. I called her immediately and told her I was scheduled to work Wednesday, but that was my chemistry final, and I had put in a time off request for the whole week. She casually mentioned that she had to cancel my approved time off because Jennifer called in sick for the whole week, so she needed me to cover those shifts. I told her she couldn't just cancel approved time off, especially not during finals week. She got hostile and told me she was the manager and could schedule whoever she wanted whenever she wanted, and if I didn't like it, I could find another job. That was it. I was done playing this game. Instead of arguing with her anymore, I decided to try a different approach. I simply stopped showing up for the shifts I wasn't supposed to work. The first time I didn't show up for a Monday shift, my phone blew up with angry texts and calls from Karen. She demanded to know where I was since I was supposed to be there. I told her I was in class like I was every Monday. She yelled that I was scheduled to work that day. I reminded her that I wasn't available on Mondays and told her to check my availability form. She hung up on me. The same thing happened the next week when she scheduled me for a Friday morning and I didn't show up, and the week after that when she put me down for a Wednesday evening. After about a month of this, Karen lost it. She called me into her office on a Sunday when I was actually scheduled to work. She told me to sit down because we needed to talk about my attendance issues. I asked what attendance issues since I'd worked every shift I was supposed to work. She accused me of being a no-show for multiple shifts and said she was writing me up for job abandonment. I told her to hold on and that I needed to get something from my car. I went out to my car and grabbed a folder where I kept all my work documents, including the original availability form with her signature on it. I walked back into her office and placed it on her desk, pointing out that this was my availability form with her signature and that I'd only missed shifts she had scheduled me for outside my availability. She stared at the form for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how to spin this in her favor. She tried to argue that availability forms weren't set in stone and that business needs came first. I corrected her, explaining that according to company policy, managers were required to respect employee availability unless it was an emergency, and being short-staffed because she couldn't retain employees wasn't an emergency. She still insisted on writing me up, calling it insubordination. I told her to go ahead, but that I was also filing a complaint with Human Resources about her consistently ignoring my availability and then threatening my job when I stuck to my schedule. She tried to backtrack then, saying we could work something out, but I was already done with her games. I went straight to Human Resources after my shift. The Human Resources representative was a middle-aged woman who listened to my whole story without interrupting. I showed her the availability form, the schedules where Karen had put me down for shifts outside my availability, and screenshots of all the text conversations we'd had about scheduling conflicts. The Human Resources person said this was pretty clear-cut, and that managers were absolutely required to respect employee availability forms. She mentioned she would pull up my manager's training records. Karen had been written up twice before for similar issues with other employees. Human Resources called her in for a meeting the next day. I wasn't in that meeting, but word spread quickly through the store about what happened. Karen got put on probation for violating company scheduling policies. She also had to attend additional management training about employee rights and proper scheduling procedures. Human Resources sent out a memo to all department managers reminding them about the importance of respecting employee availability. Karen had to read it out loud at the next staff meeting, and everyone knew exactly why that memo existed. From that day forward, Karen never scheduled me outside my availability again. In fact, she barely spoke to me at all, which was honestly a huge improvement. She'd just grunt and nod when I said hello, but at least she wasn't trying to make my life miserable anymore. A few months later, I heard that Karen was being transferred to a different location. The probation period hadn't gone well for her, and upper management decided she needed a fresh start somewhere else. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.